So how did we get from courses you'd get in the mail to a world where AI is in the classroom? Well, today we're going to dive into a really personal history of online education. We're going to follow the 30-year journey of a pioneer named Morton Flatt Paulson, using the archives of the International Council for Open and Distance Education, or ICDE, as our guide. And that quote from Paulson you're seeing, it really says it all. This isn't just some dry, technical timeline. Nope. This is a story about people, about connections, and about a global community that totally shaped the way we all learn today. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll trace this whole evolution through 5 key chapters. We'll start with those first pioneering steps, then we'll see the dawn of digital education, watch as the internet just completely takes over, and then enter the modern era of open. And finally, we'll take a step back and think about where we are now and what might be coming next. Okay, to make sense of all of this, it's helpful to think about the journey in 3 big chunks of time. You've got the 80s and 90s, that was the dawn of it all, a time of pure experimentation. Then the 2000s, which was all about trying to scale up as the internet exploded. And finally, the 2010s, which brought a much more mature, global vision to the whole thing. All right, let's jump right in with the dawn of digital education. You have to remember this was the time when the very idea of going from physical atoms like a book to digital bits on a screen was, well, it was revolutionary. The community was tiny, but their ideas were absolutely huge. So picture this. It's Oslo, 1988. It's the 50th anniversary of ICDE. You've got 700 people from 60 different countries all buzzing with these brand new ideas. And in the middle of all this serious academic talk, what do? They try to build the world's largest tower cake. It just perfectly captures the spirit of the time, ambitious, a little bit weird, and all about bringing people together. And you can just feel the pure wonder in this quote from that same year. A CD-ROM was treated like a piece of straight-up magic. The idea that this little silver disk could hold 500 books, that was completely mind-blowing for people. It was the physical proof that this shift from atoms to bits was really happening. And what's crazy is that just 9 years later, that magic became totally normal. By 1997, those massive printed conference books were gone. They were replaced by this one single CD-ROM. And this wasn't just about saving paper, it was a fundamental change in how knowledge was being created and shared. And its global thinking was happening way before most of us even had dial-up. The Bangkok project in 1992 was so far ahead of its time. It was basically an online pre-conference that ran for a whole month before the actual event, using these clunky early networks. You could honestly say this was one of the world's very first MOOCs, a massive open online course. So all that early experimentation, that was the spark. But then came the explosion. Our next era, the internet takes over. As we get into the late 90s and 2000s, the question wasn't, can we do this anymore? It was, okay, how do we do this for everybody? And the ambition was just enormous. In 1995, people started talking about mega universities, schools with over 100,000 students. This was revolutionary because, for the very first time, it gave a real path to a degree for working adults, for people in remote places, for anyone who couldn't just pack up and move to a campus. It was a complete rethinking of what a university could be and who it was for. And look at this. This wasn't just a Western thing. It was already a massive global movement. From China and India to South Africa and the UK, these institutions were reaching millions of students who never, ever would have had access to higher education before. But, okay, with all that growth came a giant headache. The defining problem of the early 2000s was this. How in the world do you take decades of these carefully designed print courses and turn them into something that actually works well online? It was a huge task, and it's what everyone was talking about. And it wasn't just the classes. Universities had to build a whole new digital front door. This 2005 screenshot from Canada's Athabasca University is a perfect little time capsule. They created an online tour so you could visit the campus from your computer. They had to completely reinvent what a campus even meant. And, of course, in the middle of all this big world-changing work, you get these fantastic little human stories. So the legend goes that at the 1995 conference, Princess Anne just parks her Rolls-Royce on the pavement, gets a parking ticket, and the traffic warden, after a quick chat with a security officer, just rips it up. It's a fun little reminder that, life happens. Which brings us to our third and final era, a new era of open.
By the 2010s, the whole field had really started to mature. The conversation wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about global policy, about access, and about what it really means for education to be open, which led to things like open educational resources, free textbooks and course materials for everyone. And sometimes the road to making good policy is, well, it's a bumpy one. I love this photo Paulson shares of a flat tire he got on the way home from a big learning summit in 2019. It's just the perfect personal metaphor for how hard it can be to get things done. But it also sets the stage for what came out of that meeting.
That summit produced the Lillehammer Roadmap, which was a huge deal. It laid out a really clear game plan for 3 key groups: what governments needed to do, what the education sector needed to do, and what individual teachers needed to do. The focus had clearly shifted to big-picture, strategic thinking.
And the result of all that work? Just look at that number, 15 million. By 2018, that was the estimated number of students enrolled across all the ICDE member institutions. Let that sink in. That's the power of this global network.
The growth is just mind-boggling when you think about where it started. You go from this tiny meeting of 87 people from 5 countries back in 1938 to a global network of 200 institutions. It's the story of how a small, niche idea became a major force for change all over the world.
So, after this incredible 30-year ride, what's the takeaway? And maybe the more important question is, where is all this going? Because the final reflections here point to a future that's, well, it's pretty complex.
And this brings us to a really challenging question that Paulson asked back in 2018. Basically, are the original pioneers of flexible learning actually becoming rigid, just as traditional universities are finally learning how to be more flexible? It's a tough, critical question the whole field has to grapple with. And the challenges are only getting more complicated. I mean, as recently as 2019, people at these conferences were already talking about the ethics of AI and using real-world examples, like brainwave trackers being used on elementary school kids to monitor their attention. Seriously, the next wave of technology brings a whole new wave of incredibly tough ethical questions with it. Which leaves us right here with this final question. We've gone from correspondence courses to CD-ROMs to the internet and now to AI. The technology just keeps evolving, but that core mission of expanding access to knowledge, that stays the same. So as we're standing right on the edge of this new era, what's the next great challenge we have to solve for education?